Well, welcome to the True Man Podcast today. Well, here's a question for you. Are you in relationship shape? Now, listen, I got to admit, I've never thought about it that way, but isn't that the beauty of having an expert guest on the podcast? With all that said, let's welcome to the show today, Roy Biancalana, certified relationship coach and nationally recognized expert in the field of attraction and conscious relationships. He's the author of three #1 best-selling books, the latest of which is Relationship Bootcamp, Hardcore Training for Life, Love and the Pursuit of Intimacy. That sounds spicy. I can't wait to talk about that. Roy, welcome to the True Man Podcast. How are you?
Oh, it's great to be here. Can't wait to have this conversation.
Oh, I can't either.
Yeah.
Well, I could go a lot of directions with this today,
Sure.
but tell us, what does one do to become an expert in relationships? How did that all begin with you?
Yeah, you pretty much make every mistake you can possibly make.
I should have seen that one coming.
Right.
Yeah.
And decide to learn from it. If I could take credit for anything, is that I'm good at making mistakes and then being curious about what I can learn from them. Right. So I never set out to become a coach, to be doing this in the latter half of my life. It sort of came as a result of a lot of the things that I was doing in my own relationships that created nightmares for me. So, like, just briefly, I was married for 19 years, and it became kind of a platonic co-parenting, brotherly, sisterly kind of relationship. There wasn't much man-woman stuff, i.e. sex and that kind of intimacy. And so that didn't work for either one of us. And so then I immediately got out of that and rebounded into a total sexual relationship, which at the time was awesome to finally be having sex. I mean, to be honest with you, it's a nice rebound. But we were together for 2.5 years, right? And we got engaged, and 6 months before the wedding, she broke it off with me. And that sent me into what I consider to be like a year-long midlife crisis. I mean, I was a mess. I mean, I couldn't sleep, I had heart palpitations, obsessive thinking. I was a lousy father that year. My career suffered. I was just a mess. And then at that point, I made another beautiful decision. Mistake at the time, didn't really know it, but to deal with that pain, I just joined about 4 different dating sites and just tried to find a new woman to help me forget about the last one. So, so again, I tell, just don't do what I did and you're going to have a great love life, right? Because I didn't take any time between my marriage and the rebound to look at myself.
Yeah.
I just jumped in. And then when she broke up with me, I was in so much pain. I was really just trying to survive the best way I knew how. And so I started meeting a bunch of other women, and, I kind of thought that I was available, but I wasn't. I was sort of using these new women to help me forget about the last one. So you can imagine the kind of drama that created. And so then in the middle of all of that, a friend of mine said, Roy, maybe you should talk to someone because Mike, to be honest with you, at that point, I really thought that the disasters in my love life were because of them.
Yeah.
I really thought I just hadn't met the right woman yet. It never occurred to me that maybe I had something to do with it. That maybe
it's really interesting though, Roy, and I'm sure you know this. So the divorce rate, steadily goes up. So second marriages fail faster than first marriages and so on and so on. And obviously, I say obvious because it's obvious to me, but it's not obvious when you're going through it, right? That you just drag your baggage on to somebody else.
Right. And that happens because you're thinking that the problem was them. Right. And so I just need to find a better partner and it's going to be fine. And that's what I was doing.
Yeah.
So I was never looking in the mirror. It never occurred to me that maybe I had some blind spots. Maybe I had some conditioning from my childhood that was making me show up in ways or attract dynamics that weren't healthy. And so in the middle of all that, I hired a coach, and my coach was wise enough to not let me play the blame game.
Yeah.
She didn't
What
want,
made you do that?
well,
What's the
pain,
pivot point?
pain,
Yeah, right. I just
right? I
wanted to
mean,
make sure.
I don't care if it's your golf game sucks or whatever. At some point you hit a point where I don't know what to do here. I don't,
Yeah.
I'm suffering. I'm stuck. And I had so much relationship drama that I finally reached out to someone and said, you know, what's going on? Right. And my coach would not allow me to point the finger of blame. She didn't want to hear about that. She said, I can only help you if you want to look in the mirror. If you want to see what are you doing unconsciously, perhaps, to create these dynamics. And so I did that. I spent about 2 years with a coach, kind of facing some of my junk, because as it did turn out, it was me. Like my wife, my ex-fiance, I mean, they had their issues, but I really saw that without my issues, things would never have gone like they did.
So when you
So,
realize it's you,
yeah,
right? You're going through this process and you take that hard look in the mirror and you realize
right.
it's you. What happens? What goes through your mind?
Well, there's a big gulp that happens. There's a real, you get your ego kicked in the nuts.
Yeah.
Right. Because you have to face some things, because the ego loves the blame, right? It's easy to say it was them, but when you say, oh my Lord, I didn't see this about me. I didn't recognize my relationship personas, my limiting beliefs, my blind spots, and how and why I was attracting these dynamics. So it's sort of a, whoa, wow.
Yeah.
But when you begin to see that, there's a kind of a hope that begins to rise up, because you recognize that, oh, if I was largely responsible for creating the nightmare I was experiencing, if I did that, then I can do it differently.
Yeah.
So there's an empowerment when you take responsibility and quit playing the victim and pointing the finger. And so I went through that, worked with a coach for about 2 years, and was after that able to pretty quickly meet and date, fall in love with, and get married to an amazing woman. I've been with her now for almost 14 years now. And I became the coach because it was so powerful for me that I just said, all right, now for the rest of my life, I just want to do for other people what my coach did for me. It's like, because I didn't get lucky. I didn't just find the right woman. It wasn't like God smiled on me. I engaged in a certain process of introspection that led to self-awareness, that led to me making changes, that is repeatable. So I just tell people, if you ask the questions I asked and you looked in the places within you that I looked, then you can have the same results I have, which is to finally be in a relationship that works and is co-creative and mutually satisfying. But it starts by taking ownership and letting go of it's them, and looking over here and saying, no, I'm interested in knowing what I don't know about myself.
What do you think holds people back from doing that?
Ego. I mean, it's not
I just
easy.
wanted to hear you say it.
Yeah. Well, it's not easy to go back to your ex-wife and say, you know what, I got to take a lot of ownership here.
Yeah.
You know, and just say that I didn't see this. I didn't recognize this motivation in me. I didn't recognize how my relationship with my mother was being played out in my life. You know, to tell someone you got mommy issues, if you're a guy, right? Because one of the things I find, and I think this is universally true in the field of relationship dynamics, is that you usually have an issue with your opposite sex parent. There's usually something there that is then showing itself up in your relationship world, right? And that was true for me. Maybe we can get into that a little bit, because the dynamic between me and my mother led me to certain beliefs about myself and certain ideas of what I thought it took for me to get the attention and the affection of a woman. That dynamic was set up when I was very early in life, which I didn't know when I was 45, but I started to discover that, oh my Lord, it is behind the scenes kind of running me, like it's the Wizard of Oz behind the curtain.
Yeah, right.
Pulling the levers and turning the knobs. And as I woke up to that dynamic and kind of saw it in me, and then I was able to shift out of it and start to show up in the world in much healthier ways.
Now, did you discover that during the coaching process? I got to be careful here. Today, as we record, it's actually my mom's birthday. So happy birthday, Mom. Love you. But is that something you discovered through the coaching process?
I discovered it kind of through the back door. What I recognized and told my coach is like, I have this tendency to attract women who are very successful professionally, but personally they're falling apart. Like they're working a lot of hours, they're making a lot of money, they're kicking ass and taking names, but they're single mothers and they can't manage it. They can't raise their kids. They can't run their household. They're just overwhelmed. They're overextended. They're what I call damsels in distress. Why do I keep attracting women that need to be rescued? Because I would immediately find myself when I met a woman that I started to function like Mr. Mom, right? not because I wanted to express love that way. It was because I was afraid that she would not want me physically or otherwise unless I made my life be about taking care of hers.
Right.
So early in relationships, I started taking care of her kids, really. I mean, getting them up to school and doing their laundry and helping them with their homework and
you just default to that? That was just an auto kind of your go-to?
Well, see, I had a belief that a woman wouldn't want me just for me. And if I had my own wants and my own needs, that the only way I could get close to a woman is if I became sort of indispensable. Like if I made my life be about taking care of hers. And this is where my coach said, how is that familiar to you? And the light started going off.
Yeah.
Because my mother was a type of woman. She took care of our physical needs, but she was kind of demanding and sort of harsh and perfectionistic. And in order to get close to mommy, if mama ain't happy, nobody's happy in my house.
That's true.
So as a little boy, if I want to be close to my mother, it was like, mommy, I'll be a good boy. What do you need? I'll make my life be about your agenda. So I remember conversations with my father as a little boy where my dad would just say, son, I know what you want to do, man. I get it. Man, don't fight it. Don't fight it, dude. It's going to be better for you, just do it her way. And it'll be fine. So I learned at an early age, because your opposite sex parent is sort of your first boyfriend or girlfriend in a sense, right? You're learning about the dynamics here.
Sure.
I learned that the way you get the attention and the affection of a beautiful woman is if you make your life being about taking care of hers. You sort of ignore yourself and what you want and what do you need? And I'll be a good boy, right? And so every little boy wants to be close to his mother, and the more I did that, the more I felt warmth from her, the more I felt affection, right? So I'm 4, 5, 6 years old. There's no conscious awareness that I am flipping on a switch to be Roy the rescuer, which is what I call him, right? But that's what happened. I started to learn, well, this is the way you get close to women.
Yeah.
You make your life be about taking care of them. And so when I started complaining about, I keep attracting the damsels in distress, my coach said, well, that must be because you're Roy the rescuer, because rescuers require damsels and vice versa. So I started to learn that relationships very often are about two pieces of a puzzle that fit together, right? We've all made puzzles, 1,000-piece puzzles, and you can find one piece of the puzzle and it doesn't go with just any piece. You've got to find its match. It's reciprocal, opposite, and they fit together, correct? So we come out of our childhoods with a kind of a psychological shape, right? Like I said, I came out of my child with a certain belief system, a certain shape. Well, if I'm a rescuer, the only puzzle piece that fits is a damsel. So I could walk into a bar of 100 beautiful women. I'll find the one woman in there that needs to be rescued.
Yeah.
Right. Because a lot of women are busy and they're kicking ass and they're taking care of their life. They're on their game, right? They might want love and support, but they're not falling apart. They're functioning. They've got it, right? I never was attracted to them. They weren't attracted to me. But when I met the damsel, it was like, well, baby, I'm made for you because I'm good boy, Roy. Like I'm your Lois Lane. I'm Superman coming right in. Okay. And so that created this pattern.
Yeah.
And most people can point to a pattern in their love lives of they're different women or they're different men, but they're kind of the same. We get in the same pattern or we face the same problem. Like, why do I attract narcissists? Why do I attract damsels? Why do I attract the emotionally unavailable? Why do my relationships end after 3 months? They start off strong and they fall apart. Most people can point to some sort of repeating pattern. And I call that the relationship Groundhog Day syndrome. Okay. After that movie where Bill Murray lives the same day over and over and over
Right.
again. It's like, I keep living the same love life over and over again. That's what I discovered. And so once I knew I was Roy the Rescuer, who had a very low masculine self-image, didn't feel he was worthy because of just who he was. It was only if he was being a good boy and doing everything and
Right.
and all the things I was doing was out of fear. Like, you won't love me if I don't do this, right? That's coming from a very insecure place. So as I worked on that, and I kind of discovered the authentic Roy, not the persona Roy, this rescuer thing, all of a sudden I started attracting different women because I changed my shape. So I didn't fit with damsels anymore. I fit with women who were healthier themselves. You follow me? This is what I do as a coach is I help people shape shift.
It's really an interesting discussion because so much of the time what I find myself talking with are, especially with other men, are their father issues versus their mother issues. Because I don't frame it necessarily like you do, which is actually interesting that could be actually affecting the relationships that you're a part of.
Right. I don't want to get too overly generalized here, but we have father issues too. But that it usually shows up in our professional life, our calling, our purpose. Like, I'm doing what daddy wants me to do. And I'm trying to, I've been trying to please my father my whole life. And that usually is talking about what you're doing with your life. But I think in this love life compartment, some of those issues show up usually with your mother.
Oh, sure.
I mean, not always. Okay. We can't be that generalized, but I think the father issue is more about who you are and what you're doing in the world. And the mother can have influence on the way in which you interact with the feminine form and so forth. So yeah, that's what I help men sort of do, that kind of introspection and become more self-aware. Like, oh, no wonder why I attracted these dynamics. And it's so fun. And it changes the whole trajectory of what happens between you and women or your partner.
Well, let's springboard into that because ultimately, I would guess my audience is predominantly middle-aged men. It kind of fits with most of the topics that I'm at. And so, there are a lot of divorced men in that area that are looking to attract, maybe a future wife. So,
or to go deeper with their current partner,
or to go deeper. So how does one get into relationship shape?
Yeah. I'm glad you say it that way because
it's a new term. I found it on your website.
One of the reasons why I wrote the book, which is up here on the screen, Relationship Boot Camp, and use the fitness metaphor, is because you don't have to do a whole lot to get women interested in a relationship discussion, but you need to be a little creative to get guys. And so if you talk about fitness and getting strong and doing some workouts,
I like the term actually.
That maybe a guy's all right. I can do a relationship boot camp. I can go for 6 weeks. Like, you go to a gym and you just kick your ass for 6 weeks and you kind of level up your fitness. And so I use that terminology for the same reason. Like, you can really focus hard in a short period of time on your relationship fitness and get stronger and be better prepared for something real, or take the relationship that you have to a whole new level. And so, yeah, the book is exploring what it means, in essence, I'm talking about what does it mean to relate in a mindful, conscious, evolved way? And what does it mean to be really grounded and present in a relationship? But I'm using the fitness metaphor. And of course, in the book, there are 7 relationship muscles, 7 workouts you need to do to get yourself in relationship shape. And perhaps we can talk about some of those.
Yeah, let's talk. Give me some help here, man.
Yeah.
Now, I've been married for 25 years, but you can never be fit enough, right?
Right. So knowing that we're talking probably mostly to men, I'm going to talk about a different muscle than if it was a podcast where it was mostly women. If it's mostly women, I would probably talk about the muscle of your relationship to your past. A lot of women have a lot of pain from past relationships, whether it's trauma and addiction and abuse from childhood to, they've been cheated on, ghosted, gaslighted. There's a lot of that. Some of us guys have done some damage, and I was one of them. Oh my Lord. I mean, yeah. But when I'm talking to guys, how about the muscle that we would call your relationship to your emotions? Most of us guys, we've just never had any training in the emotional realm. No one's ever taught us about feelings. No one's taught us about how do we feel our own feelings? How do we express them in a way that can create harmony and not problems? Most of us guys, all the feelings just come out of sexual energy or anger energy, right? Because too many of us guys have been given the message, big boys don't cry. Okay, so we sort of shut off
generationally
sadness.
Passed down from man to man.
We shut off our sadness and, don't be a pussy, right? So we're shutting off our fear and our anxiety that's there. But of course, a man can't feel that, can't express that. So we disown some of these feelings. And so everything comes out as anger. So very often for men, when we're angry, we're actually not angry. We might actually be hurt.
Right.
We might be scared, but we don't know how to do any of that. It just comes out as anger. And then it just blows women's minds because something doesn't feel right. And why are you always angry? And okay. So men need training in emotional intelligence. And we really need training on how do you handle her emotions, especially when they're coming at you, like she's mad at you. Like, how do you hold space for the feminine flow? How do you be present and become uncollapsible in the midst of her storm?
Yeah.
Because
how do you do it?
Right. The feminine emotions are so powerful. They overwhelm most of us. We don't know what to do with it. And so what we end up saying is, I think you should go talk to your sister about that stuff, or you should call your mother.
Yeah.
And then I'm like, yeah, you do that and you'll be calling your divorce attorney.
Yeah.
Right? Because, so we need to learn about the feelings, about how to express, how to hold space for a woman in their emotions, how to be a better listener, how to stop fixing when they simply want to be connected with. This is just stuff that nobody we didn't learn this in school. Nobody teaches you this in Sunday school.
Yeah.
You're not going to get this by watching TV or something. Where do men get training on the nuts and bolts of relating with a feminine creature? Right? Remember, men are from Mars, women are from Venus. The book it's a great title, right? So we're actually interacting with someone who is completely different than we are. They feel differently. They process things differently. They look at the world differently. And nobody teaches us about this. Your father probably didn't. He didn't know either, right?
No,
so
there's no
we have
playbook.
to kind of make it up as we go. And then we fumble. So it's like being thrown into an operating room and say, you have to do open heart surgery without ever having gone to medical school.
Right.
Well, I don't even know what to do. Right. So that's a big part of what I do to get men in shape, is helping them grow in emotional intelligence. You got to be smarter than a fifth grader in that realm.
Well, what's your number one tip for doing that?
Shut up and listen. Yeah, I would
Wow,
say
that's point blank.
right. One of the, if we're talking about how can I handle her emotions, is like shift from being defensive to actually being curious, in the sense of, I really want to know what you're saying and I want to really hear you. And I'm starting from the place that the feedback you're giving me is true. See, most of us get defensive right away, and she's saying something, bringing some feedback. I'm using feedback. Yeah. It's a nice word. She's giving some feedback, and we start from the place of, we're already arguing in our head. We're just, no,
yeah. And
true.
we're trying to fix it.
Right. Right.
Yeah.
Instead of saying, swallow the ego and say, how or in what way is what she's saying true? Because on some level, I don't know about you, Mike, I don't think I've ever gotten feedback from anyone where I couldn't find some truth in it.
Oh,
right?
yeah.
I mean, I've had some women say some nasty things. I've had some of my men friends challenge me on some things. And sometimes, like, nah, that one went in one, out the other.
Yeah.
But almost every time I can find, there's some truth there. Right. And if you meet a woman's emotional flow from a place of, I really want to listen, and I'm listening from, how is what you're saying true? I'm open to really owning it and making a change because of it, which takes a real blow to the ego that wants to defend. That will take you a long way. But there is some work that needs to be done to get to that place where you're dropping your defensiveness. Right.
Well, I think it's a huge challenge for most of us. I mean, I know for me, for many times, for many years, that was my go-to, probably still is to some degree, right? Because you're going to defend your turf.
Right.
Like, hey, you can't come in here.
Right.
What?
We want to be right, which means they have to be wrong. Well, you see where that goes when you get into a right, wrong, the victim villain discussion, and whose fault is this, and blame.
Yeah.
Right? So blame has to be something that's eliminated from your vocabulary in a relationship, from her too. I mean, she can't blame you, but it's not like a one-way street. Oh, she can blame you, but you can't blame her. No, that ain't it. Right. So these are some of the dynamics that really hinder us from connecting with a woman. And that's just dealing with some of her feedback. We haven't even talked about, how do I feel my own feelings, and how do I not either ignore them or suppress them? Most of us men, we don't know what to do with them, so we just push them down.
Yep.
Bill Burr does an incredible comedy routine where at some point he just talks about, just be a man, stuff those feelings down and go on with your life until you have a heart attack and die, So, So that's just one of the 7 muscles that we could talk about. But it takes some work to relate with a woman at a high level. And maybe I should say this. It doesn't take any work at all if all you're looking for is a mediocre connection, in a relationship, to where you tolerate each other and don't kill each other. I mean, if that's your goal, anybody can do that. But if you want to think about every day when you're going home from work or coming home from the store or the golf course, and it's like, I can't wait to see my girl. Like, to have that kind of joy of being with someone, that takes some work. That's hard to create that kind of enthusiasm and that kind of space.
Well, and that's interesting, because I mean, let's face it, a lot of people aren't willing to put in the work in a lot of areas of their life, unfortunately. But by the time, I'm just going to say, a dude, gets to you, I mean, where are they at? Aren't they saying, usually. Well, of course I want, usually. Yeah, of course I want to have a great relationship.
Right. But usually very often what happens is, yes, I want a great relationship. Can you help me figure out how to change her, or how to find the right one? It's not that usual for us to say, I want a great relationship. Will you cut me open and show me the junk that I'm bringing to the table? That takes a little different kind of thing.
Yep.
And very often, by the time men come to me, here's what I will say. I have more women clients than men.
Yep.
But men are, in some ways, I enjoy them more because by the time a guy comes to talk about their love life, they're ready to do some work.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like
Yeah,
for a guy to break down that much, they're really saying, all right, I'm an open book, baby. Let's do it. Sometimes when women come, they're not as ready because they already enjoy that conversation already. You know, so I have to maybe sometimes move them away from blame and to looking at yourself and why you're attracting those kind of guys and those kind of patterns. But a lot of times, by the time a guy makes the phone call, they've like I did with my coach. I was at the end of my rope. I mean, I knew I had a problem. Right? I mean, I'm the common denominator in all the pictures here. There's no way it's all them. It just can't be, right? It's like, I used to be a professional golfer. It's sort of like if you hit enough bad shots and you go take a lesson, you're past the point of blaming the equipment, right? It ain't my equipment, man. It's the person swinging the club here. So your pain, your bad golf shots makes you a good student to a good instructor because you're really ready to change your swing instead of just complaining about, I got the wrong clubs.
It really is an interesting analogy. And I say this because I'm a golfer. I haven't played much golf in the last 6 to 8 months because we had a big move tucked in there. But I went through about a year-long process of with an instructor learning how to swing the golf club. I mean, we really broke it down. And that was a great experience for me because, as you're probably well aware, we'd go to lesson 1. Here's what I want you to work on this week. And I'd go work on it. And I'd show up second week. He'd give me something else. It was a slow bleed, but every week, maximum, I got 2 swing thoughts, max.
Good.
And, but every week for about a year. And I was great on the range. I'm still trying to figure out the whole take it to the course.
Yeah, perhaps you should have done more playing lessons where he takes you out there.
Yeah,
because there is a difference.
But it does parallel life, and that is, so much of the time. And this is a big key that I took out of it for everything that I do is that, as men, sometimes we just really try to take so much on. Like, I need to fix this now.
Yeah.
Right. And it just so rarely happens that way.
Right. No, in that sense, it really is like physical fitness. You don't lose 50 pounds in a day. It's a process. It's a commitment. And the same way with your relationships, you don't get one insight and then all of a sudden everything's changed. You need to get in better shape. You need to do some workouts. It's same in your golf game. Very rarely does somebody go from shooting 100 to 80 by one swing tip. It's usually you're taking lessons and you're working at it. So yeah, that it's so funny. And this is true, I think, of guys. It's like we are open to getting advice on so many other areas of life. Like we have no problem with financial advisors. Yeah. If you like to gamble on sports, you have no problem listening to guys on ESPN about who you should bet on and this and that. And we have no problem going to a doctor and getting evaluated on, or even a personal trainer.
Right.
But to hire someone to help you with your love life, for some reason, it's still a stigma for guys. But it's one of the most important areas of your life. It even affects your finances. If you go through a divorce, you're losing at least half, if not more.
Yeah.
Right. So, man, if you ever were going to devote some time and effort and money into something, it would be that, of working on your ability to connect with a woman in a sustainable way. So that's one of those things as a coach that makes my head explode, is that guys go for golf lessons, but they don't go for relationship lessons, and their golf game might suck, and that's disappointing. But if at home life sucks, or in your love life, that's a bigger pain to me. I mean, because golf is hopefully sort of fun. You're drinking beer with your buddies,
well, it should be. It should be, right?
Whatever.
And I personally had to learn that it was fun. I just thought it was flat out competitive, and there's I think you know what I mean, but
Yeah.
that cannot be healthy. But no, listen, I 100% agree with you. I think that, because what I found is that every guy's gone through this. You know, you come home from the golf course and your wife says, "What'd you guys talk about?" I don't know why they ask that question. I'm not. That is the number one question asked by wives. I've become convinced.
Yeah.
You know what? So what'd you guys talk about? Right? And the standard answer is, yeah, we didn't talk about anything. You know, like
Understand the
what
question.
clubs we pulled out. Yeah, I mean, you know, and it's so interesting to me because in the men's small groups that I've been a part of, and I'm sure you probably, you know, do some, what ultimately happens there is that the relationships are much more than an inch deep, right? I mean, you're talking about things that really matter.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm not saying everybody doesn't have good discussions on the golf course, by the way. I'm just, you know, it's just been kind of the ongoing joke of, what did you talk about on the golf course?
Well, when
no idea.
Right. When men are engaging in a task, especially if it's competitive, there's not a lot of that conversation. But yeah, I'm glad you said that in the right circumstances, men are willing to go deep and talk about real
very
issues.
much so.
It's just that when women play golf, they're playing golf and they can be competitive, but there's always the relationship.
Yeah, the social.
Which is why they ask you what you talk about, because they would be talking about their kids and stuff.
That's true, Don.
Awesome for them. But no, I talk about why I keep slicing into trees. That's all I talk about.
Yeah.
But here's what I want to offer people listening right now. And that is, you need to discover what your current relationship fitness level is. You just like before you go buy a house, you might check your credit rating, because no bank is going to give you money if you have a terrible credit rating. You need to know where you stand so that you can raise the credit rating and then get the loan you want. You need to know what your current fitness level is, because that's going to affect your ability to create something real or to take the relationship you're in to a deeper level.
And how can people do that?
Right. Well, on my website, coachingwithroy.com, funny how that works, but on coachingwithroy.com,
I was trying to tee it up for you.
There is it's called the Relationship Fitness Self-Assessment Test. It's a 30-question true false test. Take about 4 or 5 minutes to take. Absolutely confidential. You get your results immediately. It is very accurate. Most people find out that they need to get in better shape. So just be ready for that. It'd be like if you went on a range with Tiger Woods and hit some balls, he'd probably say, yeah, you need to work on a couple things because you're not playing at the professional level. No shame in that. You just need to get better. Same way here. You probably get results that you need to get in better shape. And there's no shame in that. We just need to grow as human beings. But find out what your current fitness level is. Because if that's not functioning at a high enough level, it's almost like if you want to run at a triathlon, you could have a great strategy for the day of the race, but if you're not in shape, you're not going to make it. So most men, they want to talk about, where do I meet women and what do I say? How do I approach? They're talking about like when they're actually talking to a woman. I'm like, if you don't get to that starting line already in shape, you got trouble, right? Because you're not going to go the distance. So it's really, all my work is about preparation. It's about getting in shape. It's about getting trained for the challenge of being with a feminine creature.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
So coachingwithroy.com, it's right. You can't miss it.
Well, that's what I was going to say. So how can people get a hold of you as we begin to wrap up here?
Yep. I hope coachingwithroy.com is memorable, because that's where everything is. You know, and once you take that test, maybe you want to call me up and say, Roy, let's talk about a coaching program to get me in shape because my results are not very good. Right. And that's what I do. I find, like a trainer in a gym, you want to get in shape. The first thing he's going to do is run you through assessments. Like, where are you now?
Yep.
What's your strength levels? What's your aerobic levels? What kind of flexibility do you have? Then he knows what he's working with, and he puts a program together. Well, that's what I do. I sort of evaluate you as, okay, let's just be honest here. What do you need to work on? And let's put a program together. And all of it's found on my website, coachingwithroy.com. And if I could plug one more thing.
Absolutely.
I have my own podcast. It's called the Attracting Lasting Love Podcast. And it's just all about attracting lasting love. And it's on Apple and Spotify, everywhere, just like yours.
Well, there you go. So see, if you're just planning on being single the rest of your life and I don't know, living in a hole someplace, you don't need Roy, but I'll tell you what, we all want, I say all, but I really feel like we do. We all want to have a good quality relationship. Nobody wants to run around pissed off all the time. I wouldn't think anyway. I don't know. But so get in touch with Roy. Hey, listen, I really appreciate you being on today. I think you talked about a lot of really important topics that I hadn't had an opportunity to get to yet on the True Man podcast. And so I think you've added tremendous value today. So if you're listening to this and you need some relationship fitness, I love that. Get in touch with Roy. Roy, thanks for being on the show today.
Mike, thanks for having me. It's been a great discussion.
You bet. Take care.
Bye-bye.